Hey guys, Adam Savage here, and it is close to the end of the year, which means it's time for my favorite things. But you knew that, you clicked on the link. I'm going to be talking today about some of my favorite tools and pieces of equipment that came through the shop and allowed me to do unique stuff this year. One of the benefits about having this channel is that some makers of things make some spectacular tools available to me and to us here. So there's going to be some very high-end pieces in this favorite things, and there's going to be some very accessible pieces. I don't know about you, but when I watch other YouTube channels, it's an expensive proposition because I am constantly pausing and being like, I need that tool, and then going to figure out where to go get that tool, and then coming back to the video. And I hear a lot of people do the same thing on the videos here on the channel. I'm going to start with the thing that surprised me the most, which is a new glue. I don't love glue. I've said it many times before. I hate glue, actually. I think glue is the worst solution to a given problem, unless it is the only solution, and then there are ways to use glue, but I try to avoid it as much as I can. And this year we had marvelous YouTuber creators, Evan and Caitlin, here, and they introduced me to the glory of ultraviolet glue. Now, there's nothing unique about this stuff. It's been around for a long time. I've heard about UV glue for more than a decade, and all of our resin printers basically run on this stuff. But Evan and Caitlin showed me how to use this. And when you buy this, it often comes with a little ultraviolet flashlight. I found much more success with a thing called the UV Beast. This is not to be dallied with. It is super powerful. I would not, if I were you, turn it on unless you have your safety glasses on. I will tell you, you can feel it on your hand instantly. It feels like hot heat. So you want to be very careful with this, but it does kick this glue off almost instantly. And I have found when you're working with clear glues as a maker, you're frequently working with CA glue because it's a clear acrylic. The problem with CA glue is that as it kicks, it off-gases, and that can specifically fog things like clear plastics. None of that issue with this. And I had this project that I had been laboring over for years about how to fix it, which was the White Witch's staff from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which I had bought the original Master Replicas version of. It's a super rare prop replica. And the one that I had sat around and eventually the tips broke off, but I was able to repair them with this stuff. And look, I mean, it's not even a perfect color match because I know this is probably a polyester based and this is acrylic, but they blended so well you don't really notice. And I was able to repair both ends. There's the break here. I basically rebuilt all of that using UV glue and the UV Beast. These are now absolutely in my regular, need to be able to grab at any second rotation in the glue cart. Thank you to Evan and Caitlin. If you don't know about their YouTube channel, there's links to everything that is linkable in the description, including their magnificent YouTube channel. Oh, by the way, if you're going to get UV sensitive glue and the UV light, please wear these. Please wear these when you're using it. It can cause permanent damage faster than you can say, I forgot to put on my glasses. So put on your UV glasses. The other tool that got introduced to me, the other hand tool that got introduced to me a few years ago, but I didn't really implement it until recently, is this. And I know the non-carpenters are wondering why I'm showing you a square of stainless steel. This is a cabinet scraper, and it's an amazing thing. And I was writing Every Tool's a Hammer, the book that I released back in 2019. I was interviewing people about making, and I was interviewing Nick Offerman on the phone. This is like mid-2018. And he says, cabinet scrapers. And I'm like, I don't know what a cabinet scraper is. So I've never used a cabinet scraper. And he's like, dude, change your life. And what he explained to me to do was go buy a cabinet scraper and buy a cabinet scraper burnish. Actually, he said just grab an old screwdriver. I purchased this bespoke, made for the purpose burnisher. And what you do is you put the cabinet scraper in your vise and you take a screwdriver or a burnisher like this and you push down and you push down and you push down. And what you're creating is a very flat surface with the tiniest little burr. And then you use that burr to make things nice and flat. Now, I actually use it to keep this cutting surface relatively flat. So I've been using it and I can feel the dimensionality of a lot of these knife slices. So I bring in the cabinet scraper. And it peels up the tiniest amount of stuff, but yields a really nice flat surface. I've been doing a little bit of lutherie. I've been doing a little bit of stringed instrument construction in the background as a process. And the curved scraper has been I don't want to use it on the surface because I don't want to bowl, but this curved scraper is just, it allows me to achieve certain kinds of radii. Nothing else could give me the sensitivity of something like this. So I'm gobsmacked, and I am in Nick Offerman's debt for introducing me to this technology. We're going to cover some of the expensive stuff in the middle, but I'm going to cover one more inexpensive thing. Years ago, I bought a jar of black wash from Vallejo Paints, and I bought it just because I was like, oh, I got to see what that's like. A black wash is like a standard paint in the arsenal of every scenic painter. And you normally take an acrylic black and water it down until it was weaker, and then you use that weakness to your advantage to create detail and shadow in pieces. And I wanted to see how Vallejo did. I love this stuff. I've used it a ton. It is an amazing, I just got to see how this looks and put a thing on and take it back off again. Well, Vallejo now makes a whole series of different washes, and I think that they're going for the Warhammer painting market for doing things like painting something in great detail. You know, when you're painting lots of small details, you're never going to get the perfect transition from one color to the next because things are just too small in scale. And that's where a wash could come in after your paint job and just sit in that valley where your transition might not have been perfect and fill it with just a little bit of darkness. And then your eye just makes all those colors separate beautifully. So I'm just the biggest fan of Vallejo's wash paints, and they have all the useful colors. They've got like a sienna and a burnt sienna and some other colors. We'll include links to all of these. I'm not even sure I have the full complement here. I always try and gather that when I find a paint or anything I like. These are great. Yeah. Again, part of my regular go-to, needs to be at the front because it's going to be the first thing I reach for. Okay. Some big ticket items. We've been 3D printing here in the cave for a few years now. Nora's been 3D printing much longer than I have, but I have added it into my process. And so we've got some bamboos, we've got some form resin printers, we've got some more bamboos, and then in January this year, Form sent me the Fuse sintered nylon, laser sintered nylon, sintered lasers, anyway, SLS. They brought me the Fuse SLS system, which is laser sintered nylon. This is a part from that printer. This is one of Wally's eyes, and this is the correct scale of a Wally eye. Yeah, I know, it's insane. These parts, can you hear that? It almost rings. There is no other process here in the cave that yields parts to me that so clearly feel like a manufactured thing. The resin printer is close. And don't get me wrong, every one of these processes that we use, whether it's filament, whether it's resin, whether it's the Fuse powder deposition system, requires a bunch of cleanup. There's no escape from the cleanup section of 3D printing. They're simply transferring one kind of labor for another. But as far as the objects, and as putting out both objects of a high dimensional fidelity, a high strength, and also a feeling of being manufactured, it's really just marvelous. Apparently there's going to be a smoothing station for making the texture of these a little less pronounced, which I'm really excited about. But this is my new favorite 3D printing technology, and we have been running this thing. We've been running, what do you call it? We've been running the sprockets off this thing. The fuse printer is amazing. Okay. We're going to have to travel for this next one. This next tool is at least 50 to 75 years old. It is a pantograph mill, and let's go talk about it. Okay. This is the pantograph mill. A pantograph is simply a mechanical arrangement for being able to copy a drawing made on a stylus to another stylus somewhere else. So this is basically a rectangular parallelogram, and by adjusting the lengths of the arms' relationships to each other, I can scale. I can scale from 1.5 to 1 up to 10 to 1. And what you should know about these machines is not only does this do pantographing like this, but I can actually adjust it and turn it into a pantograph that works on the z-axis, up and down. So this is how they made injection molding tooling until the 90s. When we had computer-controlled milling machines. But before that, these copying mills, these pantograph mills were literally how almost everything in the world got built. Now, nobody needs them. A bright teenager can, for a few $100s, build a machine that does everything that this does better. But its oldness and its crunchiness is exactly why I like it. Because this was how we manufactured the world. When I make parts from this, they feel right. And by right, I mean, they're a little bit not perfect. So I'm going to give you an example. Earlier this year, I was working on the Crouching Tiger Hidden Dragon sword, and I had to make this part out of fiberglass, and I had to carve it. And while I did cut these internal parts out with a piercing saw, the exterior was like more than I could do by hand. Well, we did it here. We put the piece of fiberglass here, and then a shop assistant made me a template here that I bolted to the table and then traced the template in order to put the correct marks in the G10 fiberglass. And then when I wanted to cut it out, I put on a different template, and this is the cutting out template, registers on the same points, and this allowed me to actually cut out the entire thing. One of the advantages of reduction when you are cutting something is that the reduction gives you higher detail. So you can go up to 10 to 1 on this and cut something 1/10 the size, which means you can add in a crap ton of detail. The guy that owned this before me engraved and made pen nibs for fountain pens on this. So it's a harbinger of just how useful this thing can be. I've already made the brass ruler for my workbench in it. I have built this, and I've done some other engraving, but you'll see this come up a lot more in the coming months. There's 2 other YouTube channels that have been messing with pantograph mills, and I'm so here for it. There's so much fun to be had with these. I'm just only scratching the surface, but without a doubt, my favorite ancient tool that arrived in the cave this year. All right, let's go to the other big one. This is my new Laguna 14CX bandsaw. And I think that I should have gotten one of these 15 years ago. 15 years ago. I've been using different jet bandsaws for the last decade and a half, and they've been fine, and I've been able to tune them to do what I need them to do. But holy cow, the difference between a sub $1,000 bandsaw and a somewhere around $3,000 to higher bandsaw range, the difference is so marked, I feel a little bit of regret at having not gotten one of these a lot earlier. One of my favorite things about it is it has variable speed. So when I turn it on, there it is, going full speed, but I could turn that so far down. That's moving like that. It's almost nothing. Now, why would I want to do that? Well, actually, lowering the speed of the bandsaw is really great if you're trying to cut specific materials. And I have in this cave crap tons of old nylon. I love this as a building material. It's durable, it's stable, it's flexible, it's easy to cut. Oh, it is easy to cut with hand tools, but the minute you get anything fast on it, it melts. You can't cut this on a normal bandsaw. You definitely can't cut it on a table saw. But on a low-speed bandsaw, this immediately had me thinking, oh man, now I can use some of the hundreds of pounds of nylon that I have. With bigger blades, it also does what you call resawing. So, sorry. Resawing allows you to take thick pieces of wood and make them thinner. This is, I hadn't fully calibrated, but this is a piece of veneer I cut from a piece of Madagascar, what do you call it? Madagascar mahogany or something like that. Wood this thin coming out of here. I love making little boxes, and again, getting perfectly straight cuts was something I was able to tune this thing to do. And I mean straight within like 3 or 4 thousandths from this side to this side in terms of parallelism. This is such a beauty. This is one of the lamps that made by Laguna to come and bolt to this saw. It's fabulous. You might be wondering about this little lamp. Yeah, let's talk about this one. I have grown to love these things. And basically, it is a little LED lamp with a switch back here that sits on a little magnetic puck. So it attaches to your machine, allows you to bring in light where you want. The gooseneck is really well positionable, which not always the case. I buy these like 5 or 6 at a time. I've got them on almost every tool in my cave. And they're just like somewhere around $20. One of my favorite shop lights. Yeah. Go get a couple of these. Okay. Last year, one of my favorite things was a Nakanishi NSK dental drill, basically Dremel. A super expensive, but unbelievably amazing Dremel. Those guys reached out to me and said, are you interested in any others of our tools? And I was like, oh my God, yes, there's one I had been coveting, but it is expensive. And they sent it to me, and they sent me this beautiful sonic cutter. But this is basically a machine that sends a tiny vibration out to the end of its scalpel blade, this is a tiny little snap knife blade. And you can cut through things with just no effort, no labor. It just slices, almost no pressure even. And I'll show you that I had to carve the case for my Crouching Tiger Hidden Dragon sword. And I did all of this carving over a 2-day period using only this magnificent little beast. I haven't even started to scratch the surface of what other functionalities it has and sensitivities it has. I basically use it on the bog standard out-of-the-box settings, and it did so spectacularly. I cannot imagine another way I could have carved 5 sides of an ornate pine box and not ended up with bloody fingers and completely insane. This sonic cutter is absolutely one of the best cutting tools I have ever seen. And for textiles, carbon fiber, fiberglass, it'll do all of those things. Yeah. You're going to see a lot more of this over the coming years. This is an amazing addition to my shop abilities. Okay. This year, my favorite things also includes a tool made by a really good friend of mine. This is the Tape Mate made by the inimitable Laura Kampf. This is a spectacular tool. Let me introduce you to its wonders. First of all, it has a clip up here with which you can clip it to your belt. I find that sufficient to keep it on my belt. And then here is my favorite part about this. When you need to measure something, you just reach in and you grab it. And I have to say, when I'm doing carpentry, this is so much fun to have hanging from my belt, hanging from my apron. Spectacular. Plus a little magnet here so you can keep tools, you can keep bits and little screws and things like that. But the most fun part about these is that Laura hand makes every single one. And as Laura travels around the world doing her amazing things and executing her phenomenal projects, she always has a kit with enough parts to make a few of these. So on airplanes and buses and cars, and when she's waiting in hotels, she's assembling these. So each one you buy will be lovingly assembled by Laura herself. I can't think of many things that are cooler than that. There's an elephant in the room, which is we've got a whole bunch of new products at adamsavage.com, but I'm not going to waste your time telling you about them in this video because I designed them all. Of course, they're my favorites, but you can head over to adamsavage.com. Again, links to all the stuff in the description, and check out a whole new roster of some great gear bags, aprons, stickers, machine labels, and some other fun stuff to enjoy. But okay, back to my favorite things. This next item is one that's really near and dear to my heart. Whenever you see a video of me in the cave alone, well, I know you don't always see the cameraman, but if the camera's not moving, it's likely me. Right now, Josh is behind the camera, but much of the time I am filming myself with the phone and coming up with how to set up the shots. I have used a lot of different techniques, but my basic go-to camera rig right now is this. And this is my favorite lock line, 3/4 inch lock line holding on to the phone. But that's not the important part here. The important part here is this amazing mount that I was given in Adelaide when I was there last year for a con. This is a 3-footed monster. It is magnetic. It is kind of shockproof. It integrated so beautifully with my lock line. And now this is absolutely my main camera rig. I love this thing. The 3-footed monster is a one-person company run by an Australian bloke named Mark Boxer. He is the one that got a friend to give this mount to me last year. And literally, I didn't shoot a video about it. I just came back and started to use it. I am here to stump for Mark's amazing film product. This is spectacular. Because it's magnetic, it'll mount to the side of stuff. I mount it to my machine tools all the time. It just gives me all the flexibility that I need. I know that sound drives all of you crazy, and I appreciate the convenience of the lock line too much to get rid of it. If you do any filming in which this kind of foot seems like it might be interesting or useful to you, go get it. I'm hard on my equipment, and this does not show that I am hard on my equipment. That is a testament to its construction, not to my lack of trying to beat the crap out of it. Mark Boxer, you make an amazing product, and I'm just so glad to stump for it online. Last but not least, one that I was really surprised came in because I've known about this tool forever. This is your basic piercing saw. There's a million versions of this. I don't think it matters much which one you get unless you're working on some very specific kinds of projects. And the way you use this is you buy a piercing saw blade. We'll include a link to some of my favorite blades because that is the hard thing to find with these is there's a lot of cheap ass blades out there and a few really good ones, and you want the line on the good ones. They are worth spending on because the cheap ones will break almost every cut. The expensive ones will last for several cuts. So you just take a blade, you put it in here and clamp it between the top and the bottom, and you tension it just by like doing that business. And this is a rare case in which the simplicity of a hand tool made me get rid of a motor-driven tool. I have had a motor-driven piercing saw, otherwise known as a scroll saw, for decades. I've had 3 of them. And the latest one is, I bought it about 15 years ago because a friend of mine said it was the best one, and it's a DeWalt. And every time I used it, I hated it. It moves the material, it bounces around, it doesn't give me any sensitivity. And earlier this year, I was working on the Infinity Gauntlet, and I needed to cut out some copper in really, really fine increments. And I was like, let me break out the piercing saw, and it did it so fast. I want to say I did all the piercing on this piece of fiberglass, everything here, in less than an hour. That's a very reasonable return on my time investment. And so I found, in a rare occurrence, that the hand-powered tool gave me so much more sensitivity and more ability to cut where I wanted to, that it actually is a time saver over the motorized version of itself. Just a note, there are absolutely super expensive and high-end versions of piercing saw frames you can buy, and I have some of them, and they're wonderful, but it's not necessary. You can get 95% of the performance you need out of these really inexpensive ones. I would love to know from you if there are tools you have that are in this category. I'm fascinated by that, where the handmade thing, the hand-driven thing is better than the motor-driven thing. And look, better is a complete moving target in terms of quality. This is about my process and about the ways in which I attack my process, and that this allows me a better vantage point than the motorized version of the same. Okay, I've banged on about this enough. I'd love to hear about some of your favorite tools this year, or tools that I've introduced you to this year that you think are great, or shite, like you might think I'm totally wrong. Thank you so much for joining me. It is so much fun all year long to play around in this cave and make videos for you guys. So I really appreciate you sitting through this one and watching the whole thing. Happy holidays, a happy end of the year to you, and I hope the next one brings more good things to you and your family and the people that you love. Stay safe. I'll see you next time. I really appreciate you watching all of that. And if you are pondering right now what to get for the maker, tinkerer, or general obsessive in your life, or what to get yourself, I'd like to humbly suggest our brand new Savage Industries Shop Apron. Its predecessor is one of the most popular things we have ever manufactured, and we are still selling them, but now we've added to it. We've simplified it, we've lowered the cost, and we've made an entry-level apron, still manufactured in the United States, still made of upcycled materials, and I swear this might become my new daily wear. Get yours today at adamsavage.com.